What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday morning, and thanks for checking into our latest Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Appreciate you all checking in here today. Lots to dive into. Me and Anthony are going to talk about some headlines here this morning, maybe recap the week and look at some of the stuff that made news this week. I know sentiment, as we said earlier, has been a little bit low on the low side, I should say, and quite a bit. And that's being kind of, how do I say it? Just being gentle, so to speak, when it comes to just the challenges this industry faces this week. But look, as we said on Wednesday with David Culver, there is some interesting stuff that's materializing on the back end in Washington. But right now, some interesting news yesterday involving Alice Marie Johnson. She's the new pardon czar that Trump basically appointed. So what does this mean for the cannabis industry? And more importantly, what it potentially could mean for the industry moving forward. So with that, let's welcome in AV here on a Friday morning. I totally butchered that intro. Didn't know what I was saying.
It was all right. It was all right. I think the main theme is we're going to cover a couple things today that are going on in government. The SEC dropping the Coinbase lawsuit.
Yeah,
which is monumental. The creation of a pardon czar, which I thought was really confusing, to say the least, especially mechanically in the way that they did it. But these are two things that I think have same themes as what we're dealing with in the cannabis industry. And they're two examples of the administration putting their best foot forward to fix things that were currently misunderstood outside of the cannabis industry.
Yeah. Well, the story title basically says, did Trump's administration take a step towards cannabis reform? So let's get into that. We'll begin with news that's grabbing a lot of people's attention. As you said, involving President Trump, who just dropped a curveball on the political and criminal justice sphere by appointing Alice Marie Johnson, who he previously pardoned after a lengthy prison sentence, as the White House officials pardon czar, as you just mentioned. The reasons why: it's going to position and streamline clemency operations, where Johnson will be calling the shots on who's worthy of the elusive get out of jail card. So at first glance, what do you think of this appointment, and how are you reading this? And really, should we be reading much into this as a overall industry here in the cannabis space?
So it sounds great. Obviously, this is alluding to Donald Trump being very serious about criminal justice reform. Not saying it's cannabis specific, criminal justice reform as a whole. Looking at the current prison population, looking at current people that need to be pardoned, and getting people that do not deserve to be in prison out of prison. That being said, I don't know Alice's background as well as, let's say, I know Weldon Angelos's background. I think that's a massive missed opportunity, not having someone potentially like Weldon, who was commuted of his sentence, pardoned by Donald Trump, and is indicative firsthand of just the nonsense that's gone on for decades and generations of incarcerating people for nonviolent cannabis offenses. There's no segment of society that has been more disproportionately affected than nonviolent cannabis offenders in the prison system. This, I'm not saying, I'm a little bit biased here. This didn't need to be cannabis focused, but you could have easily led with people from a cannabis background. Weldon on a daily basis is working to get people out of prison. Weldon can speak to this matter and represents the root cause of the problem of people being disenfranchised by the overarching auspices of the government and just people that shouldn't deserve to be in prison. This is a missed opportunity, let's say, for Donald to convey that overarching message that he does care about the cannabis industry and what has happened historically.
Did I see last night? I thought Weldon put a tweet out that he's in full support of this announcement regarding Alice. Was he not?
He is. He absolutely is. You can't be an advocate for criminal justice reform and not be in support of this. But he should be that person.
Yeah.
I
believe that.
Granted, I'm sure she's very well qualified in her own right.
Yeah.
But someone with a nonviolent cocaine offense versus someone with a nonviolent cannabis offense, with the way that society is moving in the United States as it relates to cannabis, the conversation around cannabis, this, as far as I'm concerned, and I'll stand by this, this was a giant missed opportunity to put somebody in that was clearly representative of the problem that they're trying to fix.
What do you think that means? I'm curious, because on paper, you're right. What I do like is Donald Trump and this administration is they're doing things differently. They really are. Like, the reality is just like to appoint somebody like this is something that we really haven't seen before. But do you think it would have grabbed more attention with somebody with a nonviolent cannabis offense versus cocaine? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I also think that if we're going to, and this is just obviously my opinion, and I'm also a little bit biased in this arena, if you're going to put somebody in a position of the pardon czar, an industry that is completely left out in the cold with half a million workers in it, generating $30 billion a year in revenue, there should be a cannabis czar somewhere in Washington that is going to streamline and be a really true voice for the industry. Do I think the pardon czar is great? Yes. Do I think it's needed? Yes. Do I think it is frivolous in nature compared to, let's say, what a cannabis czar could do? Because criminal justice reform would fall under that as well. Yeah, I would like to just. It seems like a complete missed opportunity to me.
Well, whether it's a missed opportunity or not, it goes back to what Weldon said a couple of weeks ago with us. It seems like Donald Trump, again, his approach is a common sense approach. And yes, you can contest about, whether it's Alice, whether it's Weldon appointed in that position. But as I said earlier, it's, encouraging to see with this administration that things are being done differently. And it feels like we've kind of turned the page. And is the war on drugs viewed the same way today as it was in the last, administration? And right now, from what we see and hear in appointments like this, you start to buy into this to say, okay, maybe there is something here. But
and I don't think the war on drugs domestically is anywhere near the same degree that it was decades ago. I mean, now they're focused on harm reduction versus enforcement. They're focused on the border and they're focused on hard drugs getting in through the borders versus domestically what's going on in our cities. I'm hoping that there still could be a cannabis czar that pops up at some point that has the mandates of dealing with hemp as well as cannabis, as well as criminal justice reform, as those are things that need to be addressed and need to have someone that is in a specialized role attending to them because they haven't been addressed yet for the most part.
Well, that's just it. As Weldon said, there was a lot of things that were said that sounded great during the Biden administration, but nothing was really done. And legacy and politics became more of a play. So again, it's good to see, an appointment like this. And whether you think it's Weldon or her, the reality is that things are being done differently. But whether that has an impact on cannabis and more importantly, that we like to discuss here, cannabis reform, don't I think we want to toe a fine line here and make sure that we don't read too much into this, but it's good for the most part. All right, let's now switch to news involving the crypto industry and how this could be a great example of sweeping reform by the Trump administration, something that many of us here in the cannabis space are hoping for. But let's get into it, where regulators are currently dismantling the SEC's negative towards the industry with haste. You want to explain a little bit further what I mean by that and why the maybe cannabis industry should take note?
Yeah, I mean, the SEC for Gary Gensler's entire tenure were coming after crypto with frivolous lawsuits. He wanted to shut down Coinbase as an unlawful securities exchange. They sued anybody that they could possibly get a lawsuit against. Gary Gensler was, I hate to use the analogy, but he was the crypto industry's Ann Milgram.
Yeah.
The DEA was the DEA is to cannabis as the SEC was to crypto. Crypto has now had the SEC has now had sweeping reform, sweeping changes. Lawsuits are getting dropped. Regulations are getting put in line. Crypto is being legitimized day after day after day because the administration wants to put more of a focus on crypto. There's a crypto and AI czar in the White House, David Sachs. And this is something, and Bybit actually did just get hacked for 1.5 billion Ethereum, but that's a whole different conversation. Crypto is experiencing sweeping reform because Donald wants it to happen.
Of course he does.
If we believe that Donald Trump wants to have cannabis reform, and if we believe that Donald Trump wants to right the wrongs of the past decades in the cannabis industry, we could see something analogous to this at some point in time. Not saying it's going to be tomorrow, not saying it's going to be within the next 6 months. But this is a great example of if he wants something done and something that he believes needs to be righted and reformed and focused on, because he wants the United States to lead in crypto technology, he's going to do it, and he's going to put the full force of his administration behind it. And this keeps happening day after day. This was one of the biggest announcements this morning, that the SEC was dropping that lawsuit against Coinbase, as Coinbase is one of the largest crypto companies in the country.
Yeah. Mark Landers writes, is this part of Trump's latest executive order taking more control of the three-letter agencies? I don't want to answer
to an extent.
Yeah, it's to an extent, to your point, yes, Anthony, but there's a lot going on that I think that we don't really understand. But from what we're hearing, there's a lot of control that Trump and his administration have right now. And get in line or get out. Even with, as I said on Wednesday, even some of the legislation that he doesn't have the authority to fire, obviously, different senators, but they are concerned about getting out of line. They want to be reelected in 2026. And when you've got somebody who's the richest man in the world basically backing your administration, better take notice and get in line. But that's some of the sentiment that we continue to hear day in and day out of Washington. So take that for what it's worth.
Absolutely.
So what do you think? I know we talked about the Senate banking hearing a couple of weeks ago, and we saw a lot of similarities between crypto and cannabis. Like, there's a lot that we're trying to read into a lot of stuff right now, whether it's Alice Marie Johnson, whether it's a crypto bill potentially happening. What do you think overall in this space right now? We just need to take a step back, pause, and just be patient. Don't you think that's the big thing for this industry right now?
I think patience. I think patience is key. I'm not overly optimistic that we get included in the banking reform.
Yeah,
I'm really not. And it's because Tim Scott and everybody that's around it keeps talking about federally legal businesses. And as much as I want to believe in the integrity and the withstanding and the wherewithal of the cannabis industry, we are not defined as federally legal businesses at this point in time.
Yeah.
Could we get put in there? Yeah. Am I overly optimistic that we get put in there? No, I think it's just as uncertain as everything else that we talk about as it relates to rescheduling and the rest of the initiatives. That conversation is moving forward. We are part of that conversation, but there is a chance that we do not get put in those measures that rectify that conversation as it relates to debanking. Not saying that some sort of safe banking bill or some banking bill could follow that reform that takes place on a macro level, but the way that it's being defined and the language that's being used, just being objective, is the kind of language that you would use to leave cannabis out of the conversation.
Yeah, I don't want to get into it. There's a lot of rumors that are floating around right now, but even some regulators and people saying, hey, can Donald Trump put out a tweet that basically talks about, how these cannabis companies in the US should be listed on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ, just to like play some sort of influence. And I'm like, do you think a tweet? I understand there's certain tweets that Donald Trump can grab attention, but that would have zero impact on regulators from the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ, because I thought the Shohei Ohtani example was an eye-opener during that hearing, because if somebody can mimic basically who he is and wire was $17 million into a bookie's account, think of what would happen without the proper language and approach regarding safe and just the custody issues, obviously, too. But what that would do as far as opening up the door for, who knows, Mexican drug cartel companies that basically want to go public, there's a lot of stuff that you can understand looking at it from another side, where they've really got to walk before they run. And I know we want answers right now, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I would just be cautiously optimistic as to when that stuff is actually going to get done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move now to New Hampshire. I didn't get a chance to read too much about this, but the New Hampshire's House of Representatives, they've narrowly approved HB 75. It's a Republican-led bill to legalize marijuana possession and personal use for adults 21 and older. This is a promising sign. And what can you tell on what you've learned about this, Anthony?
So there's differing conversations going on within New Hampshire. Some lawmakers want a comprehensive bill. This bill, like you had said, use and possession are essentially decriminalized. This sounds a lot like Virginia, though, as the governor has already said. I'm going to veto this. You can pass it. You can bring it to my desk. I'm going to shoot it down. So I think barring some sort of miracle or some sort of change at the governor's desk, this is just going to get shot down again, as it's been shot down in the past.
When is the election dates for governors across the country? Is it this year?
They're 2026.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it's the same as senators are every 6 years and congressmen and women are every 2, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And governors are every 4. Yeah, governors are every 4.
Governors are every 4. That I do know.
Yeah. 26 is the next 26th is the next election. I know in Florida, but they're staggered. It depends when they're up. It's not like every 4 years every governor is up for re-election. It's variable.
Okay. Gretchen Gailey writes, it varies. Gretchen, good to see you. It's I don't think I've seen you on here this week. I hope you had a busy week. I saw you with Ricky Williams. That was something that seemed like it was a good friend.
She was at Women and Grow all week. That she was tweeting, or at least Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe.
Nice.
She was tweeting from the Women and Grow conference.
Gretchen, we're going to send you over the podcast link. And if you got time, I don't know if you're ready, but maybe log on in like 10 minutes. If you've got time, we'd love to hear how the event was and get your take on some of the stuff that went down this week pertaining to Alice Marie Johnson, among other things, the HHS new lead attorney. And I know your positivity and where you think this industry is going to go would be a fresh, enlightened approach here on the podcast. And I say that sarcastically.
She's still at Women Grow.
She's still here. All good. Let's now switch to, and we featured this actually at the top of our baked in newsletter this morning. So if you haven't gotten a chance to subscribe, make sure to scan that QR code to become a baked in newsletter. But we're switching now to news involving Pennsylvania, where the support continues to grow. As much as 70% of voters are on board for adult use cannabis, but lawmakers are still sending mixed signals, even though Governor Shapiro appears ready to roll. So what's going on here? Because I know there's a lot of back and forth. Michael Bronstein gave us some good intel last week as to what's going on, saying they want the governor in the rooms negotiating a lot of this stuff if he wants to get real about this. But the more important thing is like, this is actually a good thing that conversations are going on. So what are you seeing and hearing?
I'm hearing there's going to be a public hearing on this, that there's a lot of back and forth with the governor, with some of the Republican lawmakers in the state, some of the Democratic lawmakers in the state. Some, as Marijuana Moments alluded to, I think on 2 separate occasions, are taking the tact of there's no path forward as it relates to adult use in Pennsylvania. Others are very optimistic that there is something to get done. However, this is going to be a contentious and very inflammatory process moving forward, as both sides really aren't seeing eye to eye. However, from people we've spoken to, both sides want to get this done.
Yes.
So it's going to take some horse trading and some real negotiations, some which we might see in public via this public hearing. But I think they get it done. I mean, I really do think I think they get it done this time around. They're surrounded by adult use markets. All that tax revenue is going out of state. There's no reason for Pennsylvania not to pass adult use cannabis, especially with the medical market that they currently have in the state. And Shapiro wants to get it done. I'm confident they can figure out a way and a compromise to get this bill across sometime in 2025.
Yeah, I reached out to Michael Bronstein this morning. He actually sent me some information, but one of the stuff that he was saying is, to your point, one thing we were learning is this legalization proposal is being taken seriously by the legislature. And from yesterday's hearing, much was made of the governor's budgeting, licensing fees, taxation, and revenue projections. In other words, this is set to be, to your point, Anthony, a serious and contentious negotiation. And the reasons why, for the first time ever at a public hearing, the governor's budget secretary affirmed to the legislature that the governor would indeed provide adult use legislation. So here we go, as you just said. But good to know, Gretchen, Pennsylvania is doable. So that would be a nice win for the industry right now. Bear with me in just a second. I'm just sending you the podcast link here now, Gretchen. But I also found it interesting, and I feel like, you probably know this better than me because it's your home state. We're starting to see more public appearances of Congressman Byron Donalds. What do you think's going on here? Like, are we going to see?
I think Byron Donalds is going to be the next governor of the state of Florida. There was no, it wasn't an accident that Byron Donalds was on stage at Donald Trump's inauguration.
Yeah,
it wasn't an accident that Byron Donalds is constantly in the conversation as it relates to Donald Trump. There's one thing that Donald Trump loves just as much as himself, if not maybe a little bit less, it's the state of Florida. And he hates Ron DeSantis. So I'm going to bet that Donald Trump puts a lot of his time and focus into whatever candidate he wants to be the governor of the state of Florida. And he's going to put the weight of the presidency behind it when it comes to the gubernatorial race in 2026. We know that Senator Mr. Donalds' record less than perfect. He voted yes on SAFE. He voted no on Amendment 3, taking the same tact as Matt Gaetz, as he didn't believe that it should be a constitutional amendment, that it should be something passed by the legislature. While I do agree with him there to a certain extent, he did vote no on it. So as far as it's concerned, from my point of view, he was a no on Amendment 3. I think that Byron is going to be one of the leading candidates for the Republican Party in the state of Florida. I think he could definitely potentially win the gubernatorial race in the state of Florida if someone like Matt Gaetz decides not to run and goes to another arena. But one thing I do strongly feel about is that adult use cannabis, then the future of adult use cannabis in the state of Florida is going to find its way into those gubernatorial debates. It's going to be asked. It's going to be something that polls very popular in the state of Florida, and it's going to be something that Floridians, I think, want clarity on, as per the new governor's take on the sector and on the industry as a whole. Not saying it's a priority, but I do think it's going to come up numerous times, and it's going to be highlighted within those talks and those debates leading up to the election in 2026.
JT, we've highlighted that a number of times already. We're aware that he got arrested for weed. That was a long time ago. But you know what Floridians love? Ron DeSantis. You know what they love even more? Donald Trump. Am I correct when I say that?
I don't know.
It's a purple state, you say, but what were the election results when you look at the state of Florida after the election? Was it Trump everywhere, or was there a lot of blue in some counties?
I mean, Florida was red, deep red. But at the same time, Floridians, I would actually argue, especially looking at the data or looking at the conversation anecdotally on Twitter, those that were in the camp of Ron DeSantis were negative on Donald Trump in his backing of Amendment 3. They were siding with DeSantis over Trump as it relates to that issue, which would lead me to believe that they were deciding they would reside with DeSantis over Trump as a whole.
That's how much the Floridians love DeSantis, huh?
Yeah. DeSantis has been great for everything except for women's rights and cannabis. Aside from that, you can't really say too much about the man. I mean, he's dealt with all of our emergencies that have happened in the state of Florida to a great degree. He handled COVID very well. I don't want to get too political, but I mean, Floridians really do like Ron DeSantis. He has his flaws and he has his things that I don't fundamentally agree with him on to a certain degree. But if you polled the general population in the state of Florida, they would probably prefer that he didn't leave in 2026 versus him leaving and us going into an election and bringing a new governor into the fold.
Well, I find that interesting. You know, I understand DeSantis is loved by a lot of Floridians, but I thought for sure that Trump would trump, you know, DeSantis in this case. But, you know, you would know better, obviously, living there. But yeah,
I mean, I'm sure there's plenty that do, but I was heavily embroiled in the debate going on around Amendment 3, and the people that were on DeSantis's side, anti-Amendment 3, were all clowning Donald Trump, and none of them shifted their perception around the issue after Trump spoke about it. So that would imply that they were more in allegiance to DeSantis versus Trump.
Yep. VFF needs to close above $1. Yes, but noticing their share price with the NASDAQ listing and the requirements that are made, we're actually going to be having Michael DeGiulio, CEO, earnings season. I think they report, I think it's March the 5th week. But yeah, the next week or two, we're planning to have him on. We got a lot of lists of CEOs that'll be on here in the next couple of weeks during earnings season. But if you want to know some key metrics to pay attention to make sure to check out my video from yesterday. But we always talk about tax liabilities, which is a big thing we need to be paying attention to this earnings season. But you were highlighting that.
Pete, I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but you definitely are free to indulge in your home in the state of Florida. You just have to pay a tax to get a medical card. That's it. I mean, our medical program might as well be adult use. It's an adult use market with a tax.
Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce the first name. Paxilus. Sorry if I butchered that, but greetings from Greece. This is amazing. Hope you're doing great. Let me know what part of Greece you're from. That's a beautiful country. Love Mykonos. Love Santorini. Probably the most beautiful place on earth. It was just incredible.
DeSantis wasn't a Navy SEAL. DeSantis was a JAG officer in the Navy. I've never heard DeSantis claim that he was a Navy SEAL.
Well, saying that, we're kind of rambling right now. Let's bring in Gretchen Gailey, who has been a busy lady this week. So how have you been? And what do you make? I know Anthony and I were talking this week. Sentiment's pretty low right now, but there's a lot to think about. And I know there's people impatient. They want to see change right away. We're looking at share prices right now that are pretty low. But I think this is the first 100 days, as we said, we're not going to see much. And I think now reality is setting in for a lot of people that, yeah, we want answers, but this is going to take some time, right?
Yeah. I've been saying this since day one. Keep waiting. If it were my guess, I don't think you're going to see any movement or talk about cannabis till maybe beginning of next year. At least from the administration side. 2026,
you think, huh?
Well, I think you're going to have to run through the appeal side of the whole rescheduling hearing. I think you're going to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think you're just going to have more appeal upon more appeal. I don't think that's going to move forward anytime soon, quickly. Honestly, I mean, being in Washington, it's a very odd place right now. The vibe in the city is completely down. People don't know if they're going to have jobs. I have so many friends who have gotten emails and folks who have been fired. And so part of it's
I was just going to say that, like, what's the biggest difference that you're finding in the city now versus, say, even 6 months ago? Like you said, it's pretty down.
Oh my God, it's awful. I mean, I know everyone like hates a federal government worker, but I think until you realize what federal government workers do, I mean, I think this country is in for a rude awakening.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
I mean, it's silly. I mean, when you see about the number of people who are being laid off or fired, they do real jobs. These are real people. It's not, I don't know why people think that every federal government worker is, on a 6-hour lunch break, just drinking coffee and talking around the water cooler. I'm sure there's a couple of those. No, don't get me wrong. I'm sure that kind of waste exists. But if you want to go after real waste, you go after programs. You don't go after the people. It's all performative bullshit to pretend that they're doing something. That's what it is. And when it's going to take 6 hours to get through to anyone at the IRS this tax season, people are going to be pissed. And frankly, it's not going to slow down them sending you notices to pay your taxes. It's going to slow down them sending out help to figure out how to work through that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So as we're looking at all these layoffs, and like we said, the backlog, this is just another reason why, look, as much as you care about the industry of cannabis and want it to move, these are reasons why this is going to be pushed out till next year is what you're thinking.
Well, I mean, and it's just, par for the course. I mean, it's either going to be a government shutdown, which is very likely come middle of March. Or it's Israel, or it's Ukraine. There's always 1,000 other priorities who come first. Every time we think we're going to get an inch, something happens, and cannabis is always put on the back burner.
Yeah.
So that's why I lean heavily on us trying to care more about Congress than we do the administration. While Trump has said a few things, he has not said anything recently. He has not said anything to change my mind about how they are moving forward. Neither is RFK. Everyone he keeps putting into offices and positions don't seem to be fans of cannabis. And I understand we all think that, whatever Trump says, they're going to do, which I don't disagree with, but I just don't think he is jumping up and down to fix cannabis anytime soon.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm correct in my assumption that we more than likely get left out of the debanking conversation moving forward?
Honestly, I mean, crypto doesn't need us. They can take the language for point and just put it into their own bills. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's possible if people show up and start exerting some actual pressure on their members. I think we need to exert pressure on Senate banking. And I think we really need to make an effort there. Or yes, cannabis is going to be left out. And frankly, Tillis isn't wrong. Why should we be banking an illegal industry? Maybe you should fix that first. So there is the whole chicken and egg scenario, and we know that's not happening.
Yeah.
So we have real reasons to discuss this.
Yeah, but even if we want to say that he's right, I mean, if you want to go on that thesis, then
sure,
federal cannabis reform is very, very far off.
Correct.
So then that would just imply that shit's never getting fixed.
Welcome to my world. I mean, there are so many issues with this industry of what should come first and what shouldn't. And trust me, I get it. If SAFE happens, then perhaps that opens up capital to flow into the industry and that'll make life better. If rescheduling happens, the only major benefit would be 280E. But it's still like a shit show. I mean, it's still not federally legal, just becoming Schedule 3. No one in this industry can get compliant to be a Schedule 3 drug or deal with the FDA and what's going to come with being an actual Schedule 3. And what do you do with all the adult use markets? I mean, in theory, yes, Schedule 3 is awesome. Yay. But it's just another shit show upon shit show for this space. So we need to be working on real reform. I'm sick and tired of all of these Band-Aids that keep getting proposed.
Yeah, I hear you.
So what is real reform?
Real reform is anything. You got to do real laws. Actual laws, things that aren't attached to appropriations, like Rohrabacher-Farr, which is attached to appropriations, but you got to do that every single year. You need real laws that have real longevity that actually matter. And honestly, with Trump in office, I don't know what any of that fucking means anymore. I'm sorry, pardon my language, but Republicans aren't showing up. Congress isn't doing their job. Nobody's doing their job. You apparently create government agencies with zero oversight now and no one cares. That's against the Constitution, but no one seems to care. So I have no idea. When people are like, what's happening next? All rhyme and reason has been thrown out with the new administration. No clue.
And what'd you think of the pardons are? Optics?
It's always optics. I mean, everything that Trump does, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's to show that they're making an effort, that they are like, all right, this is my olive branch that I'm throwing out to, say, the minority voters who may learn soon enough that they're going to get shit on when all their government programs are down the shitter because Elon's just cutting them left and right. I think it's low-hanging fruit to talk about clemency. And the real war on drugs needs to be fought at the state level.
Yes.
I applaud Weldon and his work and that what they're trying to do to get, the federal offenders out there. But most drug charges are at the state level. That's where the real reform has to happen for people who are going to jail for cannabis.
Mm-hmm. I keep hearing that too. Listen, I'd love to talk more. I at least wanted to bring you on for 5 minutes just to say hi, get the vibe in Washington, what you're seeing and hearing. Go ahead.
How was Women Grow? How was the conference?
Women Grow was great. I always love going to Women Grow and seeing folks. I think, honestly, when I do those types of events, it rejuvenates me a bit more, that there are people still out there fighting the fight and that there's hope. It was great seeing Ricky and having opportunities to talk with him about where we're going and what we're doing. The whole Brittany Griner situation, that was a bit disconcerting. Ricky and I were on stage right before her. He was kind of the lead-in to her. So we didn't know what was happening until we came off the stage. And then the leaders of Women Grow came on to make the announcement. So that is very disconcerting that it's still happening in this space. But overall, the event was great. It's always good to see the women. But there was also quite the sense of this whole industry is just up in the air right now. People are, trying to figure out what they can do. Many companies are laying people off, trying to figure out what's next. I mean, I've seen cannabis pretty low, and I think we're pretty low right now. So
we are low.
I think it's going to get lower until there's real reform.
You know what, though? Good week, though, for you to get out and see people. There's nothing better than actually getting around, because when you're doing a lot of this virtual stuff, it can be taxing at times. But yeah, some of these events, was there a pretty good turnout for the most part?
Yeah. I mean, Women Grow is a smaller event. I believe there was around 400 to 500, which is still nice because, frankly, I love it when I can sleep in my bed. And, all I'm ever doing is going out to conferences in Colorado or California. So I enjoy them. When they're here in DC. But no, it was a good turnout. Women from across the country came. We're talking about how we can get involved on the federal level and lobby, and actually people don't understand at all. Yes, Dawn and I, great. Love walking the halls, love talking to the members. Here come the cannabis people. But when the members get to talk to people in the industry, when Kyle Sherman shows up for a hearing and talks about how this is impacting his legal business, when they meet dispensary workers, when they meet folks who are actually doing a grow, trying to understand what's happening, it is so much better. Yeah. A member is always, I had a very wonderful, productive conversation, which shocked me, with Dave McCormick. Why did I get that conversation? Because I'm from Pennsylvania, and he wanted to talk about what's going on in Pennsylvania. Yeah. So it matters. It matters to these people to talk to people from their states, from their districts. That goes so much further than what Dawn and I can do. So I'm always telling people, show up. I don't care if you hate my guts, if you're trolling me on Twitter, if you got the balls to come to town, I will take you around. Let's do this. So
gotta have
out there to all your guys who hate me and think I'm crazy, but
mad respect for you, Gretchen.
Whatever. Let's do this.
Keep fighting the good fight. Let's keep in touch. Let's have you back on next week. Okay. Anthony's going to be away. So maybe I'll have you on as guest host a couple times. We'll,
ooh, that'll be fun.
Wouldn't that be fun?
But then who's going to disagree with me?
I'll think of a third person. We used to have a 3-panel podcast back in the day, but we'll think of something. But
all right, you could just say no a lot, and I'll, you could pretend to be Anthony.
Yeah, there you go. All right, have a good weekend. Thank you for the update, and always keep in touch. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Yep. Well, that's interesting about the vibe going on in Washington right now, but that's the reality. That is the reality, right? You got a smirk on your face. You got nothing to say.
Elon's moving fast and breaking things. I understand what Gretchen. I clearly hear Gretchen's frustration. I understand Gretchen's frustration. I mean, if you really look into what they're doing, they need to be a little more tactical outside of what they're doing, but they're doing the necessary work.
Yeah,
that needs to be done. What I don't want to see is these crazy $5,000 checks that they said they're going to send everybody, because what's the point of cutting and saving money if you're just going to redistribute it to everybody? That's
a publicity.
Which Mike Johnson came out and said that's not even in the realm of possibility, which was nice to hear.
That's a publicity
yesterday.
Stunt.
I don't want $5,000. Keep it.
Yeah.
Keep slashing the debt and get everything in line to what they said they were going to do.
I don't think Americans are getting a $5,000 check. That is a publicity stunt.
Not mask it as stimulus checks.
Yeah. All right. Let's now move. Arns, we have the intro. Let's queue up. Dan for the chart guy. You got a white towel? You ready to throw it in yet? When it comes to cannabis space? Good to see you. How are things?
I'm good. How are you?
It's been one of those weeks, and I think the sentiment's been pretty low. And I know for trading perspectives, it's like we're looking at some of these share prices right now, and a few people saying I haven't seen the sentiment this low in probably like the 10 years I've been here for right now. But I want to make this podcast all about, look, as we know in the cannabis space, we get so fixated on these stocks. If they're ripping, yes, we're making money and all this sort of stuff. But when they continue to retract, people just believe that I'm going to load up because at these prices, how could you not? But we're so fixated on this industry when there's other industries that are moving. So what I want to basically shed some light on here today is, what are some stocks that you, Dan, has grabbing your attention, knowing your experience with cannabis? And let's face it, you're not playing cannabis right now. So what are some things that are grabbing your attention if there's a few charts that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a number of high flyers. As we know, the broader market is extremely strong, and it's been trading sideways for 2 months, but it's right up at all-time highs trading sideways. And so you have some of these, smaller cap names like PLTR or HIMS or things like that are just seeing their blue sky breakouts. And as we know, the best time to be in cannabis stocks was blue sky breakouts in Canada, and then blue sky breakouts with the MSOs. And that's when, it's price discovery. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of gains. And that's just happening elsewhere in the market. And, it's as I always say, as a professional trader, we have to be looking around and agile because so much of trading is patiently waiting for the right opportunity. And as you mentioned, MSOS has not confirmed a daily uptrend with a higher low and higher high since the vote. So we're now, 3 months later, and there's just no signal to be looking for anything different to happen at this point. And so again, I'm looking at these charts, every day or every other day, I'll check in and it just says, nope, not yet, nothing changing, not yet. So I'm just looking at these other names and just trading them and waiting.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a couple names right there. Let's start with Palantir and what we're seeing right now and why it's grabbed your interest.
So obviously, again, go to the weekly chart, you got the blue sky breakout where it's up, 1,000% from its lows. The most recent leg up was a nice, 95% over the span of 6 weeks. What I look for is, again, just volatility. I don't care if we're up or down, but I've actually been trading it a lot more the last 2 days just because we had the headline, we were overextended to the upside. Everybody was long. And then you get the headline, defensive budget cuts 8% potentially coming. And that was just the little push needed to liquidate some of these over leveraged longs and stop people out. So, we had a huge dump in those 2 days there. And really it was a day and an hour. We dumped 24%. And then, now yesterday I was playing that bounce. We bounced 13% at this point. So again, just great volatility in both directions, overall long-term uptrend. I'm kicking myself because, I was looking at this thing down at the 2022 lows and being like, this thing has a lot of Wall Street hype. It's trading down at $6, $7, $8. Do I want to grab a long-term position? And honestly, I don't understand enough about fundamentals to have any confidence in that being the right decision. And so this is one that I'm kicking myself a little bit. Like, put 1,000, grab 1,000 shares down at $7 and ride it to zero or let it play out. But there's always a lesson to learn in trading, and that's one of mine from a couple of years ago.
So looking at the charts right now, back in July, if I'm correct, wow, look how much that's increased since July.
Yeah, I mean, back, in the last year, November 2024, I mean, along even July, we're up 400, 500%.
Wow. Wild. I never realized it had moved that much, but there you go. But again, the whole idea here this morning is just like, we're so fixated on the cannabis space and that's what we cover. But I don't own a position in any cannabis stocks right now. It doesn't make sense timing wise, but there's other things that are moving right now. So on that, I wanted to switch now to our next stock. It's HIMS, ticker symbol HIMS. What are we seeing here and why is it grabbing people's attention?
So it was another one where, the 2022 lows were down in single digits and then it runs up to 70, 75. Most recently, it's had a significant leg up. And, they're buying other companies and having positive earnings and things like that. But over the last 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks, we see a 200% move to the upside. And again, just a ton of volatility. So another one where, we were extremely overextended to the upside. We just had news of a buyout. Generally, when a company buys out another company, the buy drops in price, which is what happened today. And so we're going to look for a higher low to be established. Look at the weekly chart. Again, still plenty of space for a higher low. And again, just this is both of these stocks are showing us when we are at extremes, when we are running straight up, it's not a bad idea to just trim a little bit, take partial position off. So you have a little capital. You sell 20% of a position you've been holding for a while. Now you got 20% of that cash to patiently wait and buy a dip if you want, or just lock it in and let the rest play out. And we're looking for, we got earnings looking like Monday. So we'll have to see how that goes. Yeah.
We have one of our viewers that are basically Dylan Rogers writes, can you have a look at, where was the ticker symbol? Was it ACHR?
I've looked at this one before, but not recently. So this was a nice weekly tightening range that broke bull. So we were tightening up, nice bull break, but we did fail that recent high, which is not the all-time high. So let's see, mark our recent resistance back to the daily chart. So yeah, it's a red flag to head up to resistance and then give it all back like that. We clearly have, a base of support down here, but I like to find something and say, okay, this stock has been in full control of the bulls as long as we've been holding weekly EMA 12. It's held the last couple tests and we're coming down to test it again. So for me, I'd say, okay, when we close below that, and it's actually been the same thing for Bitcoin. I've had the same mindset. When we close below weekly EMA 12, something is changing. We've been holding this for months and months and months. So nothing's changing yet. And it's the same thing with ACHR. And again, earnings next week is going to dictate whether we head back to that recent high or whether we see a bear break of $8.
All right. One of our viewers writes, great to hear about crypto and Palantir when the title's about cannabis. I'm done listening to you guys.
Oh my God, please come back.
You know what? I'll answer that question. Let's bring up maybe a cannabis chart. So when we look at MSOs, there's just maybe outline some of the stuff that you'd mentioned earlier on how there's really not, like, look at this over the past 3 months. And you're right. Nothing's catching a bid right now, but this is pretty much spread across the industry, right?
Yeah. I mean, my mindset was post-election. It's now a short and not a long. We dropped another 40% from post-election gap down. And again, there's, nice little bounces, no higher low and higher high, no higher low and higher high. If you cannot confirm a daily uptrend, the same thing is just going to keep happening. Trends are great at staying with that momentum until something changes, and it's just nothing changing. So on the current bounce, yeah, sure, it's a nice, 2-day bounce. But if we do not break 363, which is another 10% to the upside, it's just another lower high. And so make the bulls give you a reason to earn your capital. And so with me being all cash, there is no reason at this point.
Well, when we look at, like, say, for example, Florida that didn't pass adult use, and the trend that we saw in the previous quarter where revenue was relatively flat, and many are speculating this could be the case with their latest earnings season that's kicking off next week. How are you viewing this industry, both long term, if, like our previous guest saying, we need news, but if we don't get any rescheduling news for, like, say, 6 months, how do you see this all, I guess, playing out from a trader perspective, Dan?
Time is not on the side of this sector, just in terms of, you've got significant costs. You've got to keep the doors open and keep things running. And if, you're still going to be swimming against the current in terms of the regulatory environment, I expect some companies to go bankrupt and consolidation. And again, we cannot be in a better bullish macro environment over the last 2 years. And so if this is what we're doing in a bullish macro environment, what happens if there's any kind of fear in the macro environment? I mean, there's people already don't want to touch this sector. What happens when people are ditching Apple and NVDA and things like that? I mean, it's just not a good place to be. And, for me, if anything's going to drastically change instantly, it would be a very meaningful headline overnight. And then, okay, I'll get interested. But otherwise, it's going to be a slow road, and it takes a significant period of time to change trends one time frame at a time. So I'm in no rush to try and nail a bottom. I mean, playing counter trend, trying to nail a bottom in a black dirt breakdown at all-time lows, it's just the epitome of everything you shouldn't do as a trader.
Yeah. Good advice. Somebody else actually just made a comment. Oh, GTI had a bounce back off of 660. What are we seeing on that chart?
So yeah, I mean, it's a potential falling wedge in the sense that you break support with no follow through. But again, it is just a constant series of lower highs and lower lows. So I'd be watching this. I need, again, same thing. If we do not break 735, which is just a daily lower high, so it's still a daily downtrend. Yes, it broke support with no follow through. Same with MSOS. So in the short term, it's like, okay, we're avoiding some bloodshed in the moment. But again, just a lot more is needed. This is, if I'm going to say something shifting here, break the daily lower highs, get up to 760, confirm a daily uptrend. That takes 2 weeks to play out. Then we have a bit of a shift underway. But until that happens, the daily, again, same deal. When's the last time we've seen a higher low? Well, I guess the initial reaction, because these weird gaps on the OTC, but after that initial vote bounce, every single bounce has been a lower high on the way down.
Yep. So when you look at this, and I know you're saying like how this could play out long term, do you ever get involved in this industry to a point where you're saying this has just been beat up so much, or you just would rather wait and pause until there's actually news in the industry? Like, how do you, I guess, prepare yourself for this space, knowing how long you've been investing in cannabis?
Trading cannabis, just to clarify.
Sorry.
So I know that, when things get extremely beat up, even something like ACB, which is, dilutes and is just in a long-term downtrend forever, we still know that time and time again, there are 50 to 100% pops out of nowhere, just little mini short squeezes that then fade and give it all back. And we just had one, on the earnings reaction. And so I just patiently wait for, I will take those opportunities. And same thing, I wasn't in US cannabis for a prolonged period of time. And then we had the HHS news. And then I got interested again and made a little bit of money. I definitely gave back a chunk because I did ride a good chunk of my profits on the possibility of the Florida vote, and that failed. But it's a textbook example of being patient, doing nothing, getting a signal saying, okay, be interested again, taking advantage of the volatility while there's opportunity, and then recognizing, okay, that phase of volatility is gone. And once you start trading markets for decades, there are windows of multiple years of opportunity, lack of opportunity. And it's just waiting patiently and then jumping in when it's time and then back to patient. And again, all of that comes from slicing off at the neck my emotional attachment to this sector, which I was extremely emotionally attached to this sector 2010, 11, 12, learned all my lessons. I learned that was not the smart thing to do. And everybody's learning that lesson in this sector.
Yeah. Patience and no emotion, which is obviously the key. Listen, always appreciate you catching up. Those are the big takeaways right now. And really, that's just the reality. So we want to make sure that we just let people know as to what's going on and how people are viewing this space right now. And right now, as you said, the highs just keep getting lower and lower over the course of time with some of the major players in the industry. And that's just the reality of where we are right now. But appreciate, obviously, the feedback as usual. Okay.
Yeah. Have a great one.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate your time. All right. Back here on a Friday.
I'm just going to say, this is not financial advice. I don't think there has ever been a better explanation on this show on how you should play the cannabis sector versus what Dan just said.
Yeah.
Every single word that he just said was completely true. And it's really how you should think about this sector moving forward.
Yeah. Gord, you're right. Not investing, trading, big difference. And I'm glad that he corrected me on that. Glad that he corrected me on that. But that is the reality. What's that here?
I think that's the mic drop with co-op segment.
Ladies and gentlemen, back from a trip around the world, the sun and back. It's been a few months. You've all reached out. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Our good friend Guap is back. Good to see ya.
Greetings, Earthlings.
Oh.
It is. I'm so glad to be back on the show and see you guys. I've got a history lesson and a moment of zen that I think everyone needs.
We need it.
But man, that was an action-packed show and an action-packed week. We heard a lot from the lobbyists in Washington with the Cannabis Roundtable, and just now with my favorite weekly segment, Kvetchin with Gretchen. She's on the ground. She is on fire every time. She's getting better and better on the show. Can't wait to have her back.
That's a new segment.
Yeah, I will say, in my own Guap optimistic way, is Trump doing what he said he was going to do? Did he say he was going to address cannabis? Yes. Yes. So I don't know where we are on that priority list whiteboard, but we're on there, and I am excited about this czar. I would like to read a quote before I get into the drop, if you will.
Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, Trump himself said, Alice, to the new pardon czar, you've been an inspiration to people, and we're going to be listening to your recommendation on pardons. she's going to be my pardon czar, and you're going to find people just like you. You're going to look and find recommendations, and I'll follow those recommendations for pardons. Our friend of the industry and friend of the plant, Weldon Angelos, said if she's appointed as pardon czar, I believe she'll bring compassion, experience, deep understanding of justice to the role. She knows the urgency of clemency and will work to ensure more deserving people are reunited with their families. He said a lot more than that, but to say that, that cannabis won't be part of it, I think is a bit short-sighted. I think it's very much going to be part of the messaging coming out of the Trump campaign. And again, he did say that he was going to do this. Trump.
Yes.
So,
agreed.
Moving on, I want to get into some more fun stuff.
So you believe this is a positive then?
The czar? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I volunteer to be the cannabis czar, but we'll see who he actually selects. So I'd like to read a clipping from the Ann Arbor Sun from August 21st, 1971. So let's get back into the Wayback Machine, Sherman.
Oh, we all remember that day.
Mr. Peabody's going to take you back to 71. All right. I could do this in a Southern accent, like sort of like a Virginia tobacco farmer accent, I think, but I'd butcher it. No, I'll try a little bit. I've lived in North Carolina for a while.
Give it a try.
Marijuana smoking is quite popular in the U.S. today, but few people realize that grass was once so popular in the country that 7 U.S. presidents used it. Dr. Burke, president of the American Historical Reference Society and consultant for the Smithsonian Institute, included the following U.S. presidents as marijuana users: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, Andrew Motherflippin' Jackson, Zachary Taylor, and Franklin Pierce. We can add George Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama to the list.
Yes.
Okay? Since 71, a brief update. Weed was common amongst tobacco growers, but when it was mixed with tobacco, it gave a mild, intoxicating effect. The leaves and resins, aka hashish, were used to season food and as medicine prior to the Civil War. Yes,
really?
Sir. Yeah, all this D9 CBD extracted gummy edibles. You need the full plant. Sometimes you need to eat it. Sometimes you need to vape it. It's got a lot of good effects. Prior to the Civil War, pot was a successful drug when used to cure insomnia and impotence.
Whoa.
It was used primarily to reduce tension. Anyone feeling any tension these days?
Right.
Early letters from, this is Dr. Burke here, early letters from our founding fathers often refer to the pleasures of hemp smoking. There are even references to it in the congressional records. Marijuana never became a commercial industry because the plant was too easy to grow. Not this fire we have today, but I'm saying back then, the reason they call it weed is it grew in a ditch sometimes. But the stuff George Washington was smoking, okay? George Washington, James Madison, and Thomas Jefferson all cultivated weed on their plantations. George Washington is said to have preferred a good pipe full of the leaves of hemp to any alcoholic drink. Thomas Jefferson and George Washington often corresponded about the virtues of smoking hemp and are said to have traded parcels of it as a gesture of friendship. These are our founding fathers, guys. I mean, this goes on. It's very interesting. Monroe smoked hashish.
So Nixon basically screwed this all up.
Yeah, I'm saying the make cannabis legal again is correct. This was a very legal substance for a very long time. And as I said from that the piece my dad wrote about on drugs fall in and out of favor. Caffeine in and out of favor. Cannabis in and out of favor. So if you pull back and you really look at the trend line, yes, we're seeing a business contraction right now, but this has been a part of the United States of America for a really long time.
Yeah.
The fabric of America.
Well, it's interesting about this pardon czar. It's a good thing. As I said off the top of the show, we're doing things differently. It's interesting to see, as much as Gretchen was saying, the sentiment right now in Washington is low. People don't like change, and I think we all know we need a change. But I like seeing some of these announcements made pertaining to the space that we cover right now. Then you factor in some of the crypto stuff as to what's going on too, Anthony. Like, this is all stuff that they are sticking to their word on some of these things that they mentioned during the campaign. So there's nothing more I can say other than the fact that we're doing a live stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We're trying to keep people informed, but I get it, man. This week has been a challenge, obviously, to get the message out there and to get the right people. And I thought David Culver was great. It's good, obviously, to catch up with you again, Guap, but we're just going to continue to pound this out week in and week out. And this is the dog days of the industry right now where we got to be patient. That's all I can say.
The winners will emerge stronger. I mean, Gretchen got me really pumped up. I've talked to her about what I can do to talk to my Senator Tom Tillis, who seems to have a pretty nuanced view on things. I
just realized a month later that that's North Carolina on your hat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got
I've been trying to figure out
what that was.
I've been trying to figure out what that was for like the past month.
Well, you need to challenge me to a geography bee then. Look at this. That's the shape of North Carolina. It's got the waves. It's a surf hat. I used to chase hurricanes and surf them. Not anymore.
Not anymore. How you feeling for the most part?
I gave up a few things. How you
feeling the most part? A lot of people are reaching over the last few weeks. You doing good again?
Oh, Guap strong. Guap very strong. I'm at 9,600 feet elevation. That's why I'm a little loopy.
That's okay.
In Breckenridge, Colorado, I've got big snowflakes coming down, fresh powder. Party in Breckenridge.
Nice.
Anyone who's in the area. Tonight, we smoke at 10,000 feet tonight. I don't think I can handle going up to the top though. I got a nice view of the peak there, and I needed a few days to acclimate. I had a wicked headache. I'm used to being at 300 feet above sea level. So
sounds like that's a weekly podcast we need to have. Smoking at 10,000 feet with Guap.
Look, I can walk you out there. It's beautiful for a guy who grew up in New Hampshire. It's been a while since I've seen this kind of snow. It's pretty intense.
Yeah. Well, listen, on behalf of Anthony and I and the whole audience here, good to see you back, and glad to have the mic drop here on a Friday, and we'll check back with you next week. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, sir.
I'll keep tweeting those tweets and fire clips. I think we got
job.
a good 2 clips out of Gretchen today, I got to say.
Yeah, we did. You know what? I don't think I need to take you off. I think I'm just going to roll off into the sunset here this afternoon, and wish you both a great weekend. Make sure to scan that QR code, subscribe to our Baked In newsletter, everyone, if you didn't get a chance to see all the latest updates regarding Pennsylvania and some interesting takes that we have on how adult use could pass. If you want to learn more of that, like I said, subscribe to our Baked In newsletter delivered to your inbox Monday through Fridays at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Wish Anthony all the best, too. He's got a big week coming up as the family's going to expand. Good for you. Congrats, my friend. Tell your wife I say hello and all the best. And we'll be back here on Monday at 4 o'clock. Michael Bronstein from Attached to get a more in-depth approach on the Pennsylvania landscape, among other things. In the meantime, everyone, enjoy that weather. Smoke at 10 o'clock in Colorado, and tell Guap you say
10K.
10K.
Bye, Reddy.
Stay up, America.
Hey, everybody. Stay connected here. The latest Trade To Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.